welcome to another video on the Life After Brady channel. Today we're going to take a look at something a little different. We're going to take a look at the Premier League, Manchester United's, their summer review. Who they lost, who they signed, and how they look moving into the remainder of the 22-23 season over in Europe. So on the left side of here you see the players that they brought in this year, and the players that went out on the right side. That's not all of them that went out, but that's a majority of them. We'll start with on the right side. Lose two big ones to start with, Paul Pogba and Edinson Cavani. Your second striker and then your real central midfielder. They spent all summer, in my mind, trying to replace Paul Pogba with the Frankie de Jong. That was the replacement they were trying to make there. Obviously, Pogba had a very difficult spell in his second time back in Manchester, and they really tried to replace him this summer with de Jong, but ended up with Casemiro as a semi-replacement for him. More probably Eriksen is the real replacement for him, and then Cavani is the one that they really didn't replace, and I wonder how that will haunt them this summer. We'll get into that a little bit later on, but they really never brought in another striker and lost Cavani. Obviously, Ronaldo's a year older, and at the time of this recording, Martial's hurt again. So where does that hurt you? Obviously, they brought in Lizardo Martinez, so Eric Bailly went out. Phil Jones could have gone out, but did not go out. And then you kind of have some minor signings. Lingard's one that they really should have learned their lesson on a long time ago. Obviously, an academy product, was there for a very long time, but they just never sold at the right time, ultimately losing him for free. Though he's currently not able to break into the Forest squad, so really how big of a loss that is, I'm not sure. But could have made a profit. Juan Mata had a good spell with them, but again lost for free as he got up there in age. Garner's the one this week that went 17 million over to Everton. Uh, the critics are saying, hey, they are getting rid of a young guy, but at some point you do need to sell one of these guys for a profit, so they obviously do that with him. I like it to at least start that movement. At least they're thinking about things instead of getting stuck with guys like Lingard or Pogba and losing them for free or nothing. Matic obviously get up there in age. Casemiro is his direct replacement. That's clearly an upgrade there, going from Casemiro over Matic. And then just a couple of the lesser ones. Pereira goes to Fulham. Pereira's a good one to me. He's the Lingard case of you lose Lingard for free, you get 11.5 million for Pereira. That's a good deal. Tella's odd man out after you signed Maeka. And then Henderson went off on loan pretty early on. We'll see how much that comes to hurt them. And then two other minor loans and then a sale later on. But taking a look at what they did, obviously a lot of this business late in the window. Anthony signed the last week of the season. The record signing of the summer, 95 million here. Some figures are up as much as 105. Casemiro, a week or two ago for 80 million. Obviously, no discount for the 80-year-old or the over 30-year-old. Second largest signing for someone over the age of 30, but someone they clearly need. Eriksen, a good deal. Took a little while to get that done early in the summer, but they did get it done as a playmaking replacement for Pogba. Tyrell was the first signing this summer, 17 million, obviously nothing cheap, but he's now your starting left back, so clearly a good signing there. And then Martinez, probably the most talked about signing that they actually happened because it happened early. It was a large figure, 55 million for a guy that I don't know if you've heard is under 6 feet, but a good signing. And then the number 2 goalkeeper there from Newcastle. This is how they started the year last year, more or less. Starting from the back, you still see De Gea is there, so this is last year's roster. But Shaw and Wan-Bissaka were your wingbacks, left back and right back, and then Maguire currently center back, now kind of your third center back, so 3 of your 4 players have changed there. Pogba and Fred both probably out your midfield. Obviously Pogba is, Fred most likely is out with Eriksen, McTominay stepping up, and then Casemiro. And then your front line is all back in somewhat of a different order, but we'll see, and we'll get to that in a second. And then obviously your bench, if your name started with M, you were on the bench, is how it started last year. This is your current roster. Starting from the back, it's been good. De Gea, obviously the first 2 games tried to pass out. They've gone away from that strategy of just booting it up the field. Obviously that's a change they'd like to make in the future, but a solid, him and the defenders have been solid the last couple of games with Dalot, Varane, Martinez, and Maeka, right to left. And then Eriksen, Casemiro. So the Casemiro, that's a solid 5 defenders. You shouldn't see them get beat too often. I think this gets back to the Mourinho days of a couple of defense first guys, and Casemiro, Varane, Martinez, Maeka, that are going to really step up and play defense. Obviously, De Gea is not going to be as good as he was back in the Mourinho days, but still a top-notch defender, obviously. And then up front, where you get questions, that Sancho, Fernandes, and Anthony, I'd put that up against anyone in the Premier League, most likely. You know, Liverpool and Man City obviously have something to say. Man City is just probably better on most days, but, you know, some days that will beat them. The big difference to me is, you know, Rashford. You know, you have no real central forward, which we'll get to in a second. You know, Rashford's probably better off as a left wing. Martial hurt again. Ronaldo's obviously a year older, so that's something they really struggle with, which we'll get into in a second. But that's a great 10, but that 10th spot really struggling there. The one thing that me is impressive, this bench, you got Ronaldo, Martial, McTominay, Fred, Shaw, Maguire, Wan-Bissaka. You compare that to, you know, Matic, Mata, Lingard, Telles. It's a much nicer defense. I think you're going to be able to see them really close up shop and really get that, you know, last goal to put them over the edge when they need to. Obviously, Southampton and Leicester, they've not been able to get the goal over the top, but they have shut it down, have pitched clean sheets. So I do think you'll continue to see that, which is phenomenal. That's what you need in order to, you know, put yourself over the edge. Can't give up those late goals once you've won the game. Taking a look now, kind of the top transfers. This is from Player Transfer Market. Obviously, at the top, that's the glaring one. Anthony, 104 million. I mean, Ajax didn't need to sell, didn't want to sell, and Manchester United made it happen. Really hard to swallow when you look at, you know, some of these guys. You know, De Ligt, Haaland, Rafinha. You know, guys that were in the same situation of Anthony. Of, you know, they only wanted to go to one club. Lewandowski, they only wanted to go to one club, but, you know, that fee's about half of what Anthony's was. Really poor business by the United team. You know, it's not their money, but poor business on that front. Maybe they could have spent the money elsewhere. The other thing on this list to look at to me is the center forwards. Darwin Nunez goes, Alexander Isak goes, Haaland obviously goes. Richarlison and Isak are the ones to me that, hey, if you were willing to spend, you know, 104 for a right winger that you really already had in Sancho, could you have done something there? You know, kind of looking here where Nunez is 8th. Isak isn't even on this list because it's by market value, and Isak is currently, per this, at about 33 million. They paid 77 million, so a vast overpay in the eyes of this. But, you know, what could they have gotten for a true center forward if they're going to spend 104 million dollars? You know, who are the guys they could have gone and got? This is a list based on market value. Obviously, plenty of guys cheaper than those two that you could have gone and got. But, you know, someone like Dominic Calvert-Lewin from Everton, or Jonathan David over in the French league, even Richarlison. You know, guys that probably, yeah, that $70 million, $60 million if you did it earlier in the window. But clearly it's something they missed. You know, Martial was good in the preseason in Asia and then in Australia, but, you know, he's hurt again. And that's been the story of his career. That should have been a known fact. And then Ronaldo, if he wanted out, then that was pretty known pretty early. You know, he didn't go to Australia for a reason. So you knew that early. You should have done the business early. Some guys like the Napoli center forward, Tammy Abraham probably is not leaving Roma, but a couple guys here you really just should have done better business than 104 million for Anthony and 80 million for Casemiro. You know, nice signings, but, you know, you look back at this roster here. Clearly, you're missing a center forward. You know, the Athletic did a good piece a couple weeks ago of where they get their goals from. You know, you had 24 from Ronaldo last year. Obviously, if you're not going to play him, you're not going to get that 24 million. But, you know, for a team that's put 3 goals into the net so far by themselves, just not enough, and something they're going to need to do more of. We'll see if that is able to put them into the top 4, if that's going to be what bites them in the end.